Well, we've been talking. Let's actually do something. Let's go back to the old days and make a web page using a basic HTML table. Here we go. Now, as I've said all along, before you do anything, we want to kind of get an idea of where we're going with this. So here's what we're going to do with our table. And I'm in Flash right now. Many times I use Flash kind of like a chalkboard. So here we go. Let me open my swatch box right here so I have some colors to work with. Drag this over here. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm good to go now. So what we're going to do is we're going to have our basic page right here, and that would be in the body tag. We're going to make a basic page, put it in the body tag, but then what I'm thinking about doing is I want to have a header up here, and then I want to have a place to put some words and pictures right here, and then I think I'm going to have a place for a footer. There are like 10 million different ways to do this, but I think also almost every page has a little place right here to have some links. And I think I'm going to make the width. I'm going to decide the width of my table up front. I'm going to make an arbitrary decision to make that 1,000 pixels wide. So here we go. Let me go out of Flashland. Let's go back down here, find Dreamweaver, and I'm going to make a new HTML document. Notice that I'm working in an Html5 environment here with my basic code structure, and I'm going to start out by going into design mode, and first of all, I'm going to go File, Save As, and before we do that, notice I have my Files panel open, and again, if you can't see your Files panel, just go Window, Files, and you will find it. I have defined my site, which I went by site, define site, and I have all of my files down in here. And so I'm just going to go File, Save As, and I'm going to call this Tables Basic. There you go. Now and you can see it shows up right down here, Tables Basic. So now here we go. I'm going to go to make a table. I go Insert Table. Very simple. Insert Table. And here a table, it's almost like an Excel spreadsheet. So it's saying, how many rows do you want? Well, I'm going to make this thing so it has 3 rows. And I'm going to make it so that it has 3 columns. May not make sense right now, but it's going to work. And then I'm going to make the width 1,000 pixels, the width of my table. There you go, 3 rows, 3 columns, 1,000 pixels wide. I'm just going to click OK. And I'm going to undock the Files panel by holding down on the word Files. Drag it over here, and I might drag it off the screen. So here's my table, this ugly little thing right here, and here are my rows and my columns, and let's look at the code. I'll go into code mode, and here is the code for my wonderful table. Our first kind of peeksy at some real functional HTML code. Notice that the table tag is going into my body tag. And we'll drag this up a little bit. So I open my table with the table tag, and within an HTML tag, you have the tag, and then you can have attributes of the tag. And an attribute would be the width. Notice I just say width =, quotation mark, value 1,000 pixels. Border is set to 0. And we'll talk about that in a second. For my rows, I turn on the table, then I turn on a table row. TD, when you see TD, just think to yourself, table cell. In technical terms, TD means tabular data. But just think to yourself, table cell. And this here, yeah, you'll run into this. Sometimes it's handy, sometimes it's not. But ampersand, NBSP, semicolon is a non-breaking space. It's HTML code to put in a space, just like you would put a space in a Word document. You hit the space bar, you get a space. But in the land of HTML, you put in this code, ampersand, NBSP, non-breaking space, semicolon. So I turn my cell on, I turn my cell off. I turn a cell on, I turn the cell off. My third cell, turn it on, turn it off. Then I turn off my top row. I'm done. And I do that again and again and again for my next 2 rows. And then I turn off my table. So there we go. So I go back into design mode. I can see my table. Now the thing is, if I go back to my Flash, where I was doing my outline for what I want to get done, well, you know, I wanted a header up here. Notice I can drag through the cells to highlight them. And I wanted a footer down here. Okay, well, good, well, and fine. So let's get that done. Let's open my properties panel, which I try to keep that open all of the time. And let's look at our quick tag inspectors down here at the very bottom of our screen. Quick tag inspectors. And right now, if I click in a cell, our quick tag inspectors tell us, oh, you're in a TD and you're in a row and that's in the table. And if I click on the and notice the properties panel, it's giving me information about the cell. But if I click the table tag, now I get information about the table in my properties panel. And notice it's set to 1000 pixels. So one thing that a table can do, a table tag has different properties that you can manipulate. And one of those properties is you can align the table to be centered to the center of the browser. So I'm going to go over here and go to center and watch the table move to the center. Then I don't want 3 cells at the top of my table. I only want 1. One thing that Dreamweaver helps you do is I can drag through these 3 cells, come down here into the properties panel, and notice here, if I click here, it merges those 3 cells. They have become 1. And I can come down here, drag through these, merge those, and they become 1. And that's kind of sort of what I want. Now, one thing that you should always do when using tables and cells, in a perfect world, you should stipulate the width and height of every cell in the table. So my top cell is 1000 pixels wide. I set that in my code at the very beginning, but I'm going to make it 150 pixels tall. That's what the W and the H stand for here in the properties panel, and you'll be seeing that many times. So my width is already set in this cell for 1000 because that's the width of the table, but I come down to here to height, and I put in 150, hit enter or return on the keyboard. Now I have a nice tall header, and I'm going to come down to my footer. I click in that cell. Notice my 150 goes away. I'm in a different cell, and I might just give it a height of 100. Footers might not be as tall as a header. And I click enter again. Okay, so here's my footer. Now, one thing that you can do to a table cell is give it a background color. So that's what this BG is for down here, background color. If I go to BG, click in this little box, then maybe I'll make this like a gray. There's a nice gray there. Go up to my header. Maybe I want to give it some background color. I might give it a nice little yellow. Yeah, it's ugly, but it works. Now, so I've got my header up here, my footer down here. But in what we were trying to do, I wanted these two cells. This should be my content area here. I don't want 3 cells. I only want 1 cell here, so I might merge those by using my properties panel. All of a sudden I have 2 cells here, so I want this cell on the left to be skinny, just to get my links in there. So for this cell, I might click in it. I come down here to width. I might put in 250 for 250 pixels. My cell adjust. For height, I'm going to make that 400 pixels so it fits into my video screen here so you can kind of see what's going on. I can scroll down. And then I come over here and I'm going to give this some BG color like that so I can put my links in there. And pretty much I've used a table to make a basic web page. So I'm going to save that. File save. And I want to give it a title, and this is what is going to show up in the top of the browser. I'm going to call this My First Table. And let's save that. I'll just give it a save all. What the heck? And this give it a little preview. Come up here, preview in Opera, because that works for me. It's handy. And here is my table. It's centered, so if I make the browser wider or make it skinnier, it always stays in the middle of the browser window. Let's give that a little refresh. Oh, notice here, this little asterisk means that it has not been saved. And notice at the top of the browser window in Opera, it says untitled document. And that's because I haven't saved the HTML document. So I'll just go into Dreamweaver and I'll go File, Save. And when you're working in Dreamweaver, you always want to save your file and then go to the browser, refresh, and now at the top of the browser window it says My First Table. Here's My First Table right here, and we're on the way to making our first little website.